Man, what is up? What is the deal, YouTube? It's your boy DP, Mr. Juiced Up Boxing himself. And y'all know what time it is, man. It's time to get juiced up. And we getting juiced up with the history and lore. Episode 4. Yeah, I know. Y'all looking at the list. You're like, where's number 3? Y'all, I'm just going to say I had a long day, okay? And I accidentally deleted number 3. I was editing Invincibles and trying to create space. I looked down and accidentally wiped out a lot of my stuff that I needed. So number 3 went out the window. I listened to it though, y'all. I definitely listened to it. I loved how it started with Littlefinger and Varys. So anytime those two get in a conversation is good. I'm looking now. It says we're still on Robert's rebellion. Oberyn's gonna tell his side, so I'm pretty sure he's gonna talk about his sister and the mountain and how they got screwed over, literally, and bashed the baby's heads against the wall, raped the sister, all for a Targaryen, which I want to learn more about, especially with House of Dragons coming out. And I want to learn a lot more about the characters that's going to be on there. Hopefully, the later and later I get into these seasons, the more and more information I'll have. But I love hearing about Robert's Rebellion too. So here we go, y'all. I don't want to talk too much. I had a long day. Disappointing in some ways, but it's never disappointing when I get to talk to y'all. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, y'all, man. House of Dragon comes out in August. I want to get this Juiced Up family on and popping by then, so we can be ready to react at the same time if they don't copyright me. But I'll see y'all in just a few. Be blessed.
Only when the
Alright, Tyler, here we go. Y'all hear any noise in the background. I apologize, y'all know, but here we go. Number 4.
Waged war until the end of days. But how could we resist a peace we could take to bed? Centuries, the Iron Throne had no more loyal ally than the Princes of Dorne. Since we had never fallen to them, we kept our ancestral title. Perhaps this is what drew Rhaegar Targaryen to us. His royal parents had not produced a sister for him to wed, so he had to look elsewhere for a princess. And there was only one in Westeros, Elia of House Martell, my sister.
I wonder how much she
She
regret
was not
that.
the most beautiful woman in the world, or even in Dorne. But
I like that sapphire.
rare for a woman from our land. Her flower came with no thorns. She was kind and clever, with a gentle heart.
Her flower
I
came
loved
with
her.
no thorns.
I feared for her. For years I fended off lesser men from her. But when Rhaegar came, even I failed. He was beautiful and the crowned prince of the 7 kingdoms. And our mother had worked so hard to secure the match, how could Elia not accept him? They were wed, and he took her from her home, from those who loved her and would die for her, and locked her in his red keep, above his sty of a city surrounded by false friends. She bore him a daughter and a son, though each almost cost her her life.
So overall, I wonder how long she was with
She obeyed him,
Rhaegar.
and he chose to steal
How
from the
unhappy
Stark,
was she?
a pale northern girl whose
And she
veins
sits up
ran
in the
with
tower
ice like our
crying.
people. Instead of disciplining his faithless son, King Aerys executed the Starks when they came seeking justice, and ignited a revolt. I know how the Maesters describe the war now, but calling it Robert's Rebellion does not change what it was.
What was it?
The War of the Usurper. Dorne sided with the Crown,
Hey, y'all needed
for
a
when we
usurper
swear
at that
oaths, we keep them. We needed no threats from King Aerys, though he made them anyway, locking Elia and her children in the Red Keep to ensure our loyalty. Even in his madness, he knew that no true Dornishman would ever take up arms against our beloved princess, and that we would fight to the death for whichever side she was on. At the Trident, Dorne lost 10,000 men and 2 princes, my uncle in the Kingsguard and Elia's gallant husband, Prince Rhaegar, who was too slow or too arrogant for Robert's war hammer. As Robert's army marched on King's Landing,
He said too slow or too arrogant.
drive away,
I don't know. I don't think, well, hey, you never know. But I don't think Rhaegar was arrogant at all. He might have been too slow, man. Robert was in shape and was clearly a good warrior.
One true friend back into his ranks, Tywin Lannister. Lord Tywin's army sacked his friend's city while Lord Tywin's son murdered the king he'd sworn to protect. All this could have been forgiven. War is terrible, and men must become terrible to wage it. But the Lannisters knew that as long as my sister and her children, Prince Rhaegar's heirs, lived, no usurper could safely sit the throne. So Lord Tywin's dog, Sir Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, made Elia watch as he murdered her.
We knew this was coming.
And dashed her infant son's head against a wall.
He's just so cruel, so vicious. It's ridiculous. Like,
he raped my sister and murdered her. When
that's
Lord
like
Tywin
the last
presented their bodies
however long that took.
wrapped in pretty
Torture
Lannister cloaks. I have been told the red color graciously hid the blood from men's eyes. The Targaryens talk of fire and blood. In Dorne, our blood is fire. If Robert Baratheon had dared set foot in Dorne during his reign, he would have lost the foot. And it is not even him we blame for Elia. The Lannisters think their gold buys them power.
And that's real interesting, man. Whenever Oberyn came to King's Landing, I wonder what would have happened if Robert was still alive. Would he address Robert the same way he addressed Tywin?
Pay in blood.
The Maesters
The death of King Varys.
Westeros with fire and blood, and hammered 6 kingdoms into one. Fire he undoubtedly brought, as the kings of the Rock, Reach, and Iron Islands learned. But blood has never been in short supply here, ever since the first men carried a crown into Westeros. This first king united his people against the children of the forest, and is supposedly buried in the north.
You know what? We don't talk about the children of the forest enough.
The first ruler of this land and
I feel like we don't talk about the children of the forest enough because they, over anybody, they're like the Indians, you know what I'm saying? They just got overtaken by all these different people, all these different religions, all these different things. And nobody feels sorry for them. Nobody's talking about them. They just love, like I said, the characters. So, part of me understands why they made those White Walkers. It's like, yeah, y'all don't care, we don't care.
Even the mighty Targaryens were not immune from shortened reigns. Aegon's own son, Maegor the Cruel, was killed by the very iron throne his father had forged. If you believe the tales.
That's the one Joffrey was talking about.
If you don't, then perhaps the Cruel is not a wise name for a king to earn. Daeron, first of his name, tried to finish his ancestors' work and bring Dorne into the fold. For his efforts, he lost 60,000 men and his own life of 18 years. During the Great Targaryen Civil War, known as the Dance of the Dragons, a king and queen each vied for the throne, dividing their house and its dragons against each other. Eventually, the queen was fed to her rival's dragon while her son watched, and the victorious king soon died of his own wounds. By the war's end, King's Landing was smashed, cities razed and sacked, never to be rebuilt, and dragons had faded from this world.
How you lose
Decades
all
later,
dragons?
Aegon the Unworthy legitimized all his bastards on his deathbed. Inevitably, the greatest.
That's what I really want to see. Him legitimizing everybody on his deathbed and causing chaos. If I was the one in the room with him, if we just had one person, I would slit his throat. Because now you're finna cause a lot of people to die.
All the same, his descendants.
You're gonna cause a lot of people to die off your last decision. Like, you are one of the Targaryens. When ranked from power, should be top, but common sense, stupidity, and all that, I would put them at. They would be down there with the Greyjoys.
A wise ruler knows that when men bend
But except for
to
Aegon,
a
of
king,
course.
too often they rise holding daggers.
Poisons by Oberyn Martell.
Any man who calls a poison a woman's weapon is a traitor to his fellow men. A dagger, arrow, axe, these are the arms of passion. But poison is cold, calculating. Poison is the thought that wakes you in the morning and lulls you to sleep at night. You watch your victim die 1,000 times before you ever offer him that fateful taste. Is a man's hate so inferior to a woman's that we are to be denied such a weapon?
I always liked
When
that.
I was a boy of 16, a great lord caught me with his mistress. He should have been honored. Instead, the fat old fool challenged me to a duel.
I think that's what
Thanks
Robert
to
would
my
have did.
age and status, only to first blood. But his mistress and his wife warned me which of my parts he intended to draw first.
Dang, he was in the bed with both of them?
He was strong and fierce, but slow. I cut him quickly and the duel ended with honor satisfied. Then his wounds festered.
So he should be Kingslayer as well.
A laugh from me, as if a single serpent was all I knew of venom. Essence of nightshade is the gentlest of poisons. A drop dissolved into wine will slow a pounding heart and stop a hand from shaking. 3 drops will grant a night of deep and dreamless sleep. 10 drops, and you will have a sleep that does not end.
Hey,
Basilisk blood. It will give cooked meat a savory smell. But if
basilisk
eaten,
blood.
it produces violent
Almost how you
madness
said basilisk
beasts as well as men. A mouse will attack a lion after a taste of basilisk blood.
Basilisk
But to a
blood.
man who knows his art,
He said a mouse would attack a lion after a taste of that.
widow's
Goodness
blood forces
gracious.
a man's bladder and bowels to fail. He drowns in his own poisons, a slow and painful death. It has earned its name many times, I am sure. The tears of Lys, a rare and costly poison. Clear, tasteless, and odorless. Dissolved in wine or water, it eats.
I heard of the tears of Lys.
He dies in agony, which will not appear unusual if the victim is old or sickly. The favorite tool of impatient heirs. Across the world, on certain islands of the Jade Sea, grows a certain plant. The leaves must be aged and soaked in a wash of limes, sugar water, and certain rare spices from the summer isles. Afterward, the potion must be thickened with ash and allowed to crystallize. The process is slow and difficult, the necessaries costly and hard to acquire. The alchemists of Lys know the way of it, and the faceless men of Bravos and the maesters. Dissolved in wine, it makes the muscles of a man's throat clench tighter than any fist.
Is that what happened
The
with
face
Joffrey?
turns as purple as the little crystal seed from which his death was grown. And so we call it the Strangler. Which of these vials would I take from its shelf, you may ask? None. To kill a man at his table or in his bed bores me. To toil hours over a boiling pot, measuring and stirring, bores me. How
Yeah,
life
you
begins is
are a
one race and
different type of cat.
and my kind must make sure its end is worth our wait.
The Nations of the North by Tormund.
Wildlings.
I love
I
Tormund.
suppose that's flattery coming from you southerners that kneel to a pig if your daddy did. We call ourselves the Free Folk, or at least most of us won't kill you for calling us so. Some will, aye, but that's just the way of it in the true north, beyond your great white wall, where your laws and kingdoms end, and men live free, and die cold. For we live close to our land, and she's a terrible wife. Fail to obey her, and she kills you. On the frozen shore, so deep is the snow
You know,
that men ride
I used to always
ships.
think I would want to be part of the North, outside of the cold, or at least be a free folk, because I don't have to answer to the Cerseis and Joffreys of the world. I know I had the White Walker threat, but they would sleep for 1,000 years. I could have been living and dead by the time that they came back. So, but listening to what he's saying, man, I don't know.
In the far north, near the end of the Frostfangs, with game, copper, and tin for shiny bronze weapons. Better than the rusted old blades most of us have. With such advantages, they could be a generous, friendly race. They're not. As young boys, they burn their faces and rub ashen dirt into their wounds. Scars more than their face, I think. They follow their Mugnar, as the kind of man who can rule these kinds of men. I know what you Southerners are thinking. And no, the Mugnar is not a king. More like their god. Though not one you'd care to follow if you don't sleep with your eyes open.
Yeah.
And then there are the giants.
Man, look at look at that giant.
As old as the Frostfangs and about as tough. They speak the old tongue, when they speak at all, though they understand more common than they let on. They're not the monsters you Southerners think. Once I was caught in a winter storm so cold, I knew I'd freeze to death before it broke. Lucky for me, I stumbled on a sleeping giant, cut open her belly, and crawled right up inside her.
We know this story.
Kept me warm enough, but the stink nearly done me. The worst thing was, when she woke up, she took me for her babe. Suckled me for 3 whole moons before I could get away. Aye, but there's times I still miss the taste of giant's milk.
That's why they call him Giant's Bane.
Gods, she was in a good mood, and lacked a husband. An angry giant, you want no part of that. Whatever our differences, one thing unites us. When we look south, we see hundreds of feet of ice piled high, manned by shivering crows in black cloaks. Our wardens, penning us up here, warning us away from warmer lands, softer beds, and prettier girls. But the cold winds are rising. The Hornfoots couldn't stand against them. Nor the
see, this would be the biggest problem
giants. First, they kill you. Then they send your dead against you. We faced extinction. Every one of us. But then man's raider came to us and rallied every nation of the free folk, as no man ever has. He was a crow once and knows your ways. For thousands of years, we've sucked fear of your kind from our mother's teat. We've been on one side of the wall, and you on the other. No more. One of these nights, you're going to hear a knock on your front door. You best not answer.
You best not answer. Let's go.
From the east coast of the Vale, the fingers reach out into the narrow sea. 4 rocky peninsulas plagued by wind and rain, and barren to all but the hardiest of weeds. The ancestral home of House Baelish. Our house began with my great-grandfather, a Bravosi sellsword who came to the Vale at the invitation of House Corbray. My grandfather raised himself to the status of hedge knight, and even managed to acquire a bit of land and a keep on the smallest of the fingers, though I do believe he often missed sleeping under his titular hedges. The only thing worse than owning a dreary and desolate land is owning only a small portion of it. Luckily, I didn't spend much time there as a child. During the War of the Ninepenny Kings, a cheap name for a cheap cause, where other men fought for the king my father fought to befriend Hoster Tully, Lord Paramount
say
Trident and
Penny Kings? Petty
Kings.
Kings. Probably petty, but I know he probably said penny.
Heroic efforts, Lord Hoster
There go that trap.
fostered me at River Run with his own children. Until then, my whole world had been a small tower on the gull-stained rocks of the Fingers. But when I first saw the stone walls of River Run rising from the Trident, towering over me, back then I was a little more easily impressed. The boy in me thought the gods themselves must live in such a place. I soon learned otherwise.
It's like one of us going to
Edmure was quick to ensure I would never
castle
find myself in their house.
Yeah, some of us wanted to what we call Six Flags there.
After my size and homeland.
You just see a big roller coaster.
His name was just cruel enough to stick. His sisters, Lysa and Catelyn, made me a pawn in their kissing game. Traded back and forth.
Nah, they was doing little finger like that. How you expect him not to turn out the way he did?
More than Edmure.
And you know he was gonna play that to the best of his abilities. He was gonna. Yeah, a kissing game between two sisters. And I'm the only male there?
It's her duty would outweigh any feelings she had for me. Fool that I was, I challenged this Brandon Stark to a duel.
So I believe this part will be on House
He was
of
a
Dragons,
warrior,
man.
I was a boy.
Wow, at least I hope it
If Cat had
is.
not intervened, he would have killed me and laughed over my corpse. And for my insolence, Lord Tully banished me from River Run. No matter. I had learned everything I needed by then. I would fight my battles not with swords, but with wits. A few men could match me. Even then, House Baelish might have died out on the rocks of the Fingers. I was again a poor lord, with no allies and no prospects, except, if I were lucky, the daughter of a middling merchant. Then, opportunity arose. The Mad King executed that Brandon Stark and incited a rebellion. My old friend, Lysa Tully, was married off to John Arryn, Lord of the Vale.
See, that marrying people out stuff, man.
Bringing her within my circle again.
I don't know how that works
Capitalized on our former
when you deal with people,
affection
when you
and
see
persuaded her
somebody and you're
to
naturally
appoint a
attracted to
controller
them,
of customs at Cloudtown,
especially for the
Vale's
women.
port. Wars burn gold.
How they not cheap? You know the
wildfire.
males did. All the
When I
bastards
increased the port's income
everywhere.
tenfold, her husband took notice of this lowly lord from the Fingers, and when the new and profligate King Robert needed a master of coin who could find gold where no one else could, why, Lord Arryn knew just the man. Once, House Baelish had no lands, no name, and no gold. Now we have quite a lot of each.
You a hustler, bro.
New rung will the next generation climb. Let us not be hasty. I'm not finished yet.
Yeah, we know. Dragons by Grandmaster Pycelle.
Fire made flesh. Such is the nature of dragons, claim the Eastern mystics. For once they may have a point, though not the one they think. Fire consumes, leaving at its end naught but ash.
Yeah, that's all it needs to do.
The fate of the Targaryens and their dragons.
He's not wrong about that.
Thousands of years ago, Valyrians stumbled on the first dragon eggs in the mountains of the 14 Fires.
And what they do?
I cannot imagine shepherds could hatch dragon eggs and bind such creatures to their will, but whatever aid they must have had is lost to history. Every educated person knows
Lord of
the
Light.
dragon lords then conquered most of the known world, breaking the ancient Giscari Empire, enslaving a continent, building roads and bridges that still stand today, though the art that made them is lost.
And I don't know if those
empire
are
of
dragon scales
marvels
or
and
castles that they're trying to build into the sky.
Now what is left of Valyria? A smoking wasteland. Ash. In time, Aegon Targaryen and his sisters brought their 3 dragons who had escaped the doom to Westeros, perhaps thinking to regain his people's lost glory.
And it makes me wonder if Aegon's dragons got caught up in the doom. Who would he have been? Would he still be a conqueror?
Harrenhal, he proved that mighty castles weren't either. Aegon Targaryen became Aegon the Conqueror, first of his name, founder of a dynasty. His first act, to order his dragon Balerion, the Black Dread, to melt the swords of his beaten foes into his new iron.
He the OG because he the first one created that whole Iron Throne, and I'm gonna beat all y'all stuff down and turn it into a chair that I can sit on. And can't nobody anybody after Aegon. You just mimicking.
Dance of the dragons, an angry mob stormed the dragon pit, that huge, now ruined vault where the Targaryens stabled their beasts. Thousands died, but through sheer numbers and madness, 5 of the Targaryen dragons lay dead by the morning, which was perhaps too many. Thereafter, each generation of dragons grew smaller than its parents. Their skulls used to line the throne room of the Red Keep in order of birth. The oldest, Balerion, could swallow an ox whole. The last skull was barely the size of a dog's. Yet the Targaryens never stopped trying to revive their dragons. Aerion Brightflame drank a draught.
I'm about to say, this looks like he's doing. It looks like he's drinking the wildfire.
Hatch stone dragon eggs.
That's what I mean.
And
the common sense of the Targaryens is pretty low.
Aerys II looks almost sensible. He only burned other men to death. Now we hear rumors that the young Daenerys Targaryen has hatched 3 dragons far to the east. If she were to be so foolish as to march on Westeros, she will not find, as her ancestor Aegon did, 7 disparate kingdoms frightened by her strange beasts.
Pycelle type so much shit.
A continent united behind Lord Tywin Lannister, who extinguished her own father's flame. And we have known dragons now. We have seen them die.
And you think, because you see them die, what would you do? The Kingsguard by Bronn.
Most boys dream of becoming a Kingsguard. Rich boys from good families get a chance. Smart boys stay at home and sing songs about them instead, opening purses and thighs, because the Kingsguard isn't really good for much else. There was one Kingsguard, I forgot the bastard's name, who swore an oath to his dying Targaryen king to crown his daughter after him. The very night that king died, his Kingsguard crowned the king's son instead. When an old man of a small council
can't trust nobody.
This honourable knight opened his throat. Bastard died in the very civil war he started, along with the old king's son, daughter, and most of their dragons. And the Kingsguard? All that duty and honour.
All that duty and honour?
Which Targaryen to give it to. Twin brothers even ended up on opposite sides, died with tears on their cheeks as they cut each other down. I suppose I should think that's tragic, but stupid men do stupid things every day, and nobody.
This man killed his own twin.
Prince Aemon, the Dragon Knight, may be the most famous Kingsguard who ever lived. How did he die? Defending Aegon the Unworthy from the brothers of a man whom Aegon fed to his dogs. The man's crime? Sleeping with one of the many mistresses.
So, Targaryens, not only they have incest sex, but they were naming this, like, so how many Aegons was there? Because Jon was supposed to be Aegon as well.
Their lives even more of a waste. Bodyguards to the maddest king the 7 kingdoms ever saw. Watching their king burn men alive. Standing guard as their king raped his queen. Hiding the Stark girl that Prince Rhaegar stole away. Causing a war that toppled their king. And all this without any gold or women to show for it. Stupid buggers. The only one with any sense was Jaime Lannister. When his father stormed the city, he put a sword through the Mad King's back rather than die.
Of course, Bronn will say that is his homie.
He's still here. They're not. Even if the Kingsguard are the greatest knights in the realm, knights are just asses in armour, riding whatever horse their daddies gave them. Putting on a white cloak doesn't make a man smarter or bolder. It's just a pretty little curtain.
It's just a pretty little curtain. I like Bronn, man. I like the way Bronn narrates. The Kingsguard, Jaime Lannister.
Talent dream of becoming Kingsguard. The boys without talent? Well, I wouldn't know. I remember the day the Lord Commander wrote my name down in the White Book, the official record of the Kingsguard.
Yeah, we remember that day too, man.
The youngest member ever to
Joffrey reminded you very well.
Arthur and Sir Barristan for valor against the Kingswood Brotherhood. An outlaw had decided to try his luck against a lowly squire.
A 40-year-old knight with one hand.
Shortly afterwards, King Harris II, who hadn't yet earned the title of the Mad King, took me into his service. If I have ever been happy, it was that day. For centuries, the Kingsguard had been the glory of the realm. Aegon the Conqueror had established the Order as his personal guardians after uniting Westeros with fire and blood. He knew that some of his subjects wouldn't take to conquest, and his dragons were no use against knives in the dark. No doubt surrounding himself with the greatest knights in Westeros made his rule more palatable and less foreign as well. Everyone in his kingdom soon knew the names and sang the songs of the Kingsguard. I certainly did from my earliest days. Lord Commander Gerald Hightower, the White Bull. Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning. Barristan Selmy, the Bold. Prince Louis Martell. Oswald Went, Jonathan Derry, and, soon enough, the boy prodigy, me. We protected the kingdom.
Yeah, you know what? I'd be interested to see a younger Jaime. I know we got young Jaime in season 1, but the old tales like he's telling, I would be very, very interested in seeing some of that as well.
Was I awed to see my name inscribed in the same
Look,
book
Jamie
as
got
my
one page.
Of course not. I was 16 and brilliant.
Kingslayer.
I knew it belonged there. Beside the name of Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, who wielded the Valyrian sword Dark Sister. He died defending King Aegon the Unworthy from assassins, though the king had insulted Aemon throughout his reign and had well earned his fate, because Prince Aemon had sworn our oath.
So one of them died in battle. Jamie's like, man, I could have died like that.
Blackfire for an hour during the Battle of the Red Grass Field, though outmatched and grievously wounded, because Sir Gawain had sworn our oath. Beside the name of Sir Duncan the Tall, who as a hedge knight broke several of Prince Aerion Targaryen's teeth while defending a Dornish woman. He later rose to Lord Command and burned beside his king and soul, because...
We can say what we want about George R. Martin, but think of all these names, all these characters, this whole universe. I feel like you low-key gotta be dreaming and you see these people in your dreams and you give them names like, okay, I would call him boom, because I don't see any other way you can possibly think of some of these names that these people got, or some of these characters that people have. Like, how it's so many.
Tucktail and Ran. Like mud, their names soiled the White Book, almost as much as mine.
House Martell by Oberyn Martell.
Unbowed, unbent, unbroken. The words of House Martell, a promise to our enemies and a challenge to our lovers. Thousands of years ago, the warrior queen Nymeria crossed into Dorne from Essos, fleeing the dragon lords of Valyria. After she landed, she burned her ships, all 10,000 of them, so no cowards could slink home. What a woman! Dornish in spirit before she ever was in flesh. She was lucky to land in Dorne, where powerful women are not locked away in septs and the beds of old men. My ancestor, Mors Martell, saw her.
They used to try to humble women bad, boy. You could be a free thinker, a powerful woman. You could be a Daenerys back then, and they would lock you in a room for old men to have their way with.
After the tradition,
that's crazy.
House Martell then ruled Dorne as princes, not kings, unless the eldest child was a daughter. For unlike the rest of Westeros, our loyalty isn't commanded by a cock. We follow a prince or a princess Martell just the same. And we always have.
Honestly, Dorne is almost like the Wildlings, man. They actually have a difference. They got somebody they follow, but they not judgmental, I guess, in how they do things. But then again, they do have bastards, so I don't know.
The sands swirled, men died, and her dragon saw nothing. The sun shone, men died, and her dragon bowed to our greater fire. The Targaryens retreated with their tails tucked between their legs.
Yes.
Of course,
you would think the dragons would thrive over there in that.
Daeron the First succeeded at great cost and reigned in Dorne for a few glorious months.
The three-headed dragon.
His steward pulled down a sash by his bed to summon his consorts. Instead, the canopy split open and 100 red scorpions fell on him. He wasn't Tyrell.
I'd have died
to getting stung
before they even hit me.
In a fortnight, House Martell again ruled a free Dorne. Eventually, after centuries of courtship, House Martell got into bed with the Targaryens. We took King Daeron II and his sister for our own before they could take each other, and 6 kingdoms became 7. Even now, I do not blame my ancestors.
So that's how we got to the 7.
One look at those long silver locks. It is not every day a man gets to ride a dragon. But they soon learned that you can't leap off a dragon at will. My sister Elia, she married Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and became the princess she already was. In Dorne, she walked among vipers and none would bite her. In King's Landing, she found herself surrounded by lions. When Robert Baratheon rebelled against his rightful king, his future father-in-law, Tywin Lannister, ordered his beast, Gregor Clegane, to rape and murder my sister.
I knew that was coming.
Along with her helpless children. And men called the Lannisters heroes. Now, Lannisters sit on the Iron Throne, surrounded by the blasted swords of Aegon's broken foes. I wonder if they remember, as I do, that none of those swords are ours.
Hey, you know what's crazy?
I wonder if
they didn't have guns back then.
My
So the mountain's able to run around and do what he wants to do.
Precious red cape. Maybe
what would be going on in the world now? There was only swords.
But
no guns, no automatics, no semis. Just swords play.
In the grass.
How many nations would already be conquered? Valyrian Steel by Jorah Mormont.
Iron chainmail and steel plate over the chest. Metal gauntlets over the hands and greaves over the legs. A visored helm over the skull. A knight in full armor can shrug off swords, spears, and axes. But Valyrian steel slices through his protections like so much cloth. As advanced as iron is from bronze, so is Valyrian steel from ordinary steel. Lighter yet stronger, and nothing like it. If you take a whetstone to a Valyrian blade, you'll need another whetstone. And maybe another hand to hold it. Nobody knows how the Valyrians forged their steel. Less than a handful of smiths can now even reshape it. The process, like so much of their civilization, was lost in the Doom.
Man, they lost so much in Doom, man.
Spells into the molten metal and blasted it with dragonfire.
Yeah, there's that
when
dragonfire.
You see a Valyrian blade, smoky and dark as if drinking in the sun, and rippling with 1,000 folds, you may not scoff so loudly.
That's what I'm saying, man. It sounds like dragonfire was the key to a lot of things because it ran so hot. They was able to make hotter weapons and everything. So I don't understand how a direct hit with dragonfire didn't kill the Night King.
Some drifts through the world as prized daggers and jewelry for rich merchants. I've even seen a Dothraki Auric. But much more of Valyrian steel lives
they made a Dothraki Auric in Valyrian steel? That'd have been hard.
A sword passed down from father to son for generations. Ice of House Stark.
No, they got
of
one.
House Tarly. Lady Forlorn of House Corbray. But even precious treasures can be lost. Aegon Targaryen's Blackfire and Visenya's dark sister disappeared in Daemon Blackfire's rebellion. A foolish king
they lost their two Valyrian swords.
Bright roar to Valyria, and neither blade nor man was seen again. And then there are the swords that are not lost.
How do you stop somebody swinging that sword? Then it's gonna go right through another sword.
5 centuries, Longclaw was the pride of House Mormont, my house. Even penniless and in great debt, I chose to sell men rather than the sword. And when my shame became known and I fled Bear Island for the east, I left it behind for my father, to hold it for a worthier heir.
Jon Snow.
Valyrian steel is a wonder of the world, sharper than wits, truer than men.
Sharper than wits, that's hard.
But even its edge
not sharper than my wits,
so
though.
deeply as a son's failure, nor its value match that of redemption.
See that wolf on there? Alright, y'all, that was History and Lore, season 4. I have season 5 next. I'll be posting that probably tomorrow. And I'll also be posting some highlight stuff, y'all, since they want to copyright all my television shows I react to. So, and I still got Fight Watch. You know, y'all check out my Fight Watch with Trent Dog on here. I'm gonna do a couple more from XKO at home. But for now, man, History and Lore, Game of Thrones season 4, that was beautiful. It was more on Robert's Rebellion again. I want to lead up to House of Dragons, but I would never get enough of Robert's Rebellion, and I would not ever get enough of some of these characters telling these stories, especially the Mormonts and the Littlefingers and the Varys. The characters I'll never get to watch again because they're dead. And the show is ended. So, all right, y'all. Hit that like, comment, subscribe. Juiced Up Family Man, and I will be seeing you next time. Let's go.